At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Can you feel it in the air? That sudden shift of mood? It's the perfect time to shed the winter blues and experience the revitalizing qualities of driving a Lincoln. It starts with the Lincoln Spring Sales Event. So step outside and visit your local Lincoln retailer or Lincoln.com for some seriously mood-enhancing offers on current and past Lincoln models. Your transformation awaits. Learn more at Lincoln.com.
This podcast contains adult themes and language, and some of the things that we discuss may be disturbing to some listeners. In this podcast, we discuss sexual assault, torture, race, and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care of yourself.
And welcome to Fruitloops. Buiti binafi and bienvenidos, bitches. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah.
Fruitloops is a podcast about true crimes committed by people of color and those who are othered and the victims, because there are, believe it or not, systems, institutions, and patterns in society that gatekeep this information. But we're going to give it to you straight, no chaser. The truth is, we're all capable of doing very shitty stuff.
Yep.
And all victims deserve to have their stories told. These crimes rarely get any public attention because, in the simplest of terms, the news is racist. Allegedly.
And we are Wendy and Beth. She's Wendy, a Black Latinx woman, and I'm Beth, and I just happen to be white.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's just a little piece of who we are.
Oh, yes.
But who we are not is journalists, investigators, or psychologists. We're just a couple of gals interested in true crime. Also, the opinions expressed in this podcast are just that, our opinions.
Who are we talking about today, friend?
Well, today is episode 237, the Duck Island Murders, for which a Black man named Clarence Hill was convicted. But there are questions about whether or not he actually did it. So this was a really interesting case to research.
Yeah, definitely. I went down kind of like
bunch
a
of
restorative justice. Yeah, a bunch of rabbit holes.
I said hills.
Yes,
rabbit
those
holes.
two. Hills and holes. Now, before we get into the Clarence Hill of it all, how you doing?
Pretty good. So last week was rough. It was rough.
Yeah.
But it's looking better this week. And especially since Biden stepped down.
Yeah.
What a relief.
What a week.
Yeah.
I was just minding my beeswax Sunday. It was like, ooh, what a lovely day. Just chilling with the family, watching a movie. Easy like Sunday morning. Oh, no, step down. What? It was like that. Like, and it was Sunday, right? So I'm waiting. Where are the people to tell us what this means?
Yeah.
Where,
yeah.
What
the
does
emergency
this mean?
pods is what they've been calling
That's
it.
what I was waiting for. But this announcement was at 1:45 my time, and there was no emergency announcements.
There was nothing for
podcast.
a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have access to TV at the time. So it was like, who do I have? And then, a little bit of time passed, and now we know a Black woman is positioned to kick Donald J. Trump's ass.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yep.
That deserves a hip-hop air horn. Yes.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got a younger person, a Black woman, an Asian woman.
Just a prosecutor.
Yes, a prosecutor.
You know, she's put away a few felons in her day.
Yeah, prosecutor versus a felon.
Yeah, exactly. And I just,
be great.
And she's not perfect, right? Kamala has.
No, nobody's perfect.
Nobody is perfect. But, this could change the trajectory of American history, a history of the world, if you think about it. And I think it's just really exciting. So,
it is.
All right, hold on to your butts, everybody. It's time to get into listener letters. Where's that harp?
Well, hello, angels. Thank you.
What's in the bag, Beth?
Well, I wanted to say thank you to Sarah for your lovely email, and it really made my day when I read it.
Yeah, no, it was beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to give you the air horn now because I forget shit a lot.
So Sarah wanted to say that she loved our episode on Wanda Jean Allen, that she grew up in Oklahoma City, but learned nothing about the very racist and violent history in school, of course. None of us did. Well,
no, none of us did. Nope.
And she said that her ancestors participated in the land run.
Oh, interesting.
And her family still speaks about it with pride.
Uh-oh.
And that drives her crazy.
I would love to be around at Thanksgiving.
And she really likes the history portion of the podcast, and that warms my history-loving heart.
Mine too.
And she now lives in Chicago because she left Oklahoma as soon as she could.
Good for her. Good for you.
So thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah, doing big things over there in Chicago. Thank you for the most beautiful letter.
Yeah.
And stay safe out there.
Yeah. And if any of you have any questions or comments, please send them to fruitloopspod@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at
602-935-6294.
And we may feature it on a future episode. But if you don't want us to, just let us know and we won't. Simple as that.
Simple as that.
Yep.
I got some other good stuff in this mailbag. We got a new Patreon.
Right on.
Sarah A.
Another Sarah.
Look at this. It's the week of the Sarahs. Sarah, here's your hip-hop air horn. Thank you so much for becoming a Patreon.
Yeah, thank you.
And here is your tune. Okay. It's like true crime almost every day. It's the good vibes on our Patreon page. It's the fraud and scams that you just didn't take. And who would have thought? Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, thanks,
I love
Sarah. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks.
And thank you to all of our Patreons.
And all the Sarahs out there in the world.
Yes, all of you. All right, so we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to get into the story when we come back.
I'm Dr. Jen Ashton, your host for Season 2 of The Visibility Gap, a podcast presented by Cigna Healthcare. Throughout this season, we'll be tackling something vital, the women's health gap. We'll hear from real people and experts as we unpack important topics like maternal health, menopause, and heart disease. Listen in and download the new season wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Pluto TV. Are you looking for your next case? Pluto TV has all your favorite crime dramas streaming for free, which means suspicion is free, with countless cases to crack. Watch CSI, Criminal Minds, NCIS, Blue Bloods, Tracker, FBI, and SWAT, all for free from all your favorite devices. Feel the free. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
We're back.
All right.
Remind us, Beth, who is our subject today?
Well, our subject today is the Duck Island murders, which took place in the 30s and 40s in New Jersey. And the AKAs for this perpetrator was the Duck Island Killer, And the Spooner Slayer.
Oh, because they were spooning.
Because the
cuddling.
victims were spooning, yes.
Right, get it, okay.
A man named Clarence Hill was convicted of the murders, but did he do it?
I don't know, to be honest.
Well, let's look into it.
Let's get into it. So now we're going to move on to the love and light section of our show, where we just convey love and light to the victims. Rest in power to each and every one of them, and love and light to those whose lives were cut short and taken too soon. Love and light to any of the survivors, any loved ones and community left behind to pick up the pieces. And we just wish everybody who is still reeling continued healing. The victims are Vincenzo Jimmy Tonzillo, 20 years old, Mary Majatovic, 15, Frank Casper, 28, Catherine Kitty Werner, 36, Ludovicum Louis Kovacs was 35, Carolina Maroconi was 24, and there are several surviving victims. Howard Wilson, Irene Robbins, John Testa was 25 years old, and Antoinette Marcantonio, 21. So now let's get into the setting. Take us there, Beth.
Well, the setting is Trenton, New Jersey, the state capital. Trenton sits at the bank of the Delaware River, which serves as the border for the states of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Trenton is 28 miles northeast of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and about 55 miles southwest of New York City.
Yeah, I didn't realize how close, and I
All
guess that's
these
why they call it the
places
tri-state
were.
area. Yeah. But there's some talk about, I don't know anything about sports, but they're moving the New Jersey team south or closer to Philadelphia. And people are like, they might as well just be called the Philadelphia Nets because it's so close. I think that's my understanding. But I don't know anything about sports, so I could be completely wrong. Anyway, across the Delaware River from Trenton is Morrisville, Pennsylvania. To the east and south is Hamilton Township. I'm gonna do it. Alexander Hamilton. So a township is a geographic area and unit of local government that is usually smaller than a county and is often found in rural areas. Townships are responsible for providing public services and governance to the population in the township.
So it's not big enough for a town or a city. People are spread out in this rural area, but they kind of group them all together and
Not
into
quite
this
a county.
township. Yeah, not quite
Yeah.
a county. Yeah,
Got
group
it.
them together into a township. And I think it's a northeastern kind of thing. I could be wrong about that. But
Okay. Well, any geographers or historians,
Let us
set us
know.
straight. Yeah.
So the original settlers of the region where Trenton now resides were the Lenape or the Lenni Lenape. The tribe's historical territory includes New Jersey, Pennsylvania, the lower New York Bay, and parts of Delaware.
In 1679, an English Quaker named Mahlon Stacy and other Quakers settled in the area, and it became known as the Falls, and then later Stacy's Mills. In 1714, William Trent, a Philadelphia merchant, bought 800 acres from Stacy's son and laid out the town of Trenton, which was named in his honor in 1719.
At first, I didn't get it. I'm like, Trenton? Oh, Trent, like kind of like
Oh.
Trenton, I guess.
Ah.
Yeah, because William Trent.
Yeah, Trenton.
Trenton.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, there we go. That makes sense. History.
So here's a fun fact.
Okay.
During the American Revolution, General George Washington led the American army of 2,400 soldiers across the Delaware, just north of Trenton, on Christmas night in 1776.
Wow.
And the next morning, they attacked some Hessian troops who were quartered in and around Trenton. I didn't realize that that's where that happened.
Yeah, me
There's
neither.
that famous painting of Washington crossing the Delaware. And that's
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know what painting you're referring to. You know, George Washington, interesting character when you look back at the truth. How many slaves? He had more
Yeah.
than anybody else?
Oh my gosh.
Wow. I don't know if that's true, but he
Oh.
did have some. So anyway.
I was like, wow, really?
No, I don't know. I
was
don't know how many he
totally-
had.
Don't fact check Wendy.
Yeah, don't fact check me on that. I know he had some. I just don't know how many.
But in any case, this surprise attack was a major victory for Washington during the fight for United States independence from Great Britain.
Cool. And Trenton served as the temporary capital of the United States in 1784 and again in 1799. The city became the capital of New Jersey in 1790.
Black people have been integral to Trenton's history since the colonial period, when William Trent, Mahlon Stacy, and other early residents brought enslaved people to work their land and serve in their homes.
By 1810, the earliest year in which data on race was reported in the United States Census, Trenton counted 435 Black people among its more than 3,000 residents. The Black community remained at a fairly constant 15% of the town's total population during the early decades of the 19th century.
It was during this early period that Black residents began forming institutions to serve and support their small community, such as churches, schools, social clubs, and service organizations.
Beautiful. Throughout the 19th century, Trenton grew steadily as Europeans such as Italians, Poles, and Hungarians came to work in its mills. In the later part of the century, because there was so much European immigration, the percentage of Black folks went down by 4% of the population.
But during the Great Migration, when Black people were fleeing the South due to white violence, terrorism, and oppression, the Black population in Trenton climbed back up. In 1910, Black residents numbered about 2,500. By 1920, there were more than 4,000, and by 1930, more than 8,000.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like, more people are arriving and telling people, their family
their
down
families
south,
and their
hey,
friends.
come up here.
Yeah.
You can find a job, a place to live, and there's less people trying to kill you.
Yeah.
So although New Jersey did not have Jim Crow laws, that is, state and local statutes that legalized racial segregation, they did have de facto segregation. Each ethnic group lived in different sections of the city or ethnic enclaves.
Chambersburg was an Italian neighborhood. East of Chambersburg was Hungarian South Trenton. Black folks lived in the neighborhood of Coalport, North Clinton, on the northern edge of town.
There's so much history here, but generally, this happened in communities all over the United States around this time period and across the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. As the Black population grew, it became harder to discriminate against individual Italians or groups of Poles or groups of Hungarians. They sort of morphed into the white population. They became white.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the skin color that marked them,
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's obvious you're Black.
Yeah.
If you're Italian, you're white,
You can pass,
You can
right?
pass,
You can pass. And so the definition of whiteness changed. All that to say, the definition of whiteness changed in America.
Gotcha.
So during the 1920s, the nucleus of the Black community was on Spring Street between Willow and Calhoun Streets. It became a home to the city's Black middle-class residents, including a number of doctors, lawyers, and other educated community leaders.
It was also a center of Black-owned and operated businesses, a place where Black residents could visit a beauty salon or a barbershop, dine out in a restaurant, and buy groceries, clothes, and other items.
In the age of segregation, where some downtown white businesses had signs stating they did not accept Negro patronage, the businesses on Spring Street provided Trenton's Black community with the goods and services necessary for modern life.
So what about Duck Island? I mean,
What
this
about it?
whole story about Duck Island. Well,
Quack, quack, motherfucker. No, I'm just kidding.
well, the initial murders took place on Duck Island. And Duck Island is an unincorporated community located along the border of Hamilton Township and Trenton. Despite its name, it's not an island. It's a peninsula of marshy lands where the Delaware River and Crosswicks Creek join. It's about a 10-minute drive from Trenton.
Oh. And due to its remoteness and nearness to Trenton, during the 1930s, Duck Island was often used as a lover's lane, an area where a romantically involved couple can go for privacy. Bow chicka wow wow. So now let's get into the early life of Clarence Hill. Hit it, Beth.
Clarence Hill was born in 1929 to Wilson and Elizabeth Hill. He had a sister named Lizzie and a brother named Rosalie. The Hill family was well respected in their community and regularly attended a local Baptist church.
Clarence grew up in Hamilton Township and graduated from Trenton High. He worked as a laborer and was the superintendent of the Sunday school at the Mount Olivet Baptist Church near his home on Wilfred Avenue.
At the time of his arrest for the Duck Island murders, Clarence Hill was married to a woman named Minnie Lee, and the couple had 2 young daughters. In March of 1942, he joined the Army and was eventually stationed in South Carolina. He had never been arrested or in trouble at all in his entire life.
So now let's get into the timeline. So just as an FYI, as usual for a historical case, keep in mind that some of the information could be a little off, and we did the best we could, but it is an old case.
Yeah.
So all of this happened 80 years ago. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
On November 8th, 1938, the evening of Election Day, 19-year-old Victoria Tonzillo, an expectant mother, packed a lunch for her husband, 20-year-old Vincenzo Jimmy Tonzillo, for his night shift at a sand and gravel company in Morrisville, Pennsylvania.
So they lived in Trenton, and he would go across the bridge to Morrisville to work.
Got it.
Yeah. Jimmy then dropped Victoria off at her mother's house because she didn't like spending the night at home alone. And Jimmy left for work. Or so he told Victoria. However, he did not go straight to work.
Oh, no. Instead, he picked up Mary Maya Tovik, 15 years old, and she was a neighbor girl. And the two drove to Duck Island for a tryst. Mary was the daughter of Serbian immigrants, and she was the oldest of 8 children, 6 girls and 2 boys. And 15, I feel weird that they were both going for a tryst. I feel weird saying that because
she was only
child.
15.
Yeah.
Times were different back then, but still, she was a child. Yeah. Jimmy and Mary had been meeting up like this before Jimmy's shift almost every evening for about 2 weeks. Mary's father had found out about it and had forbidden her to go out, but she went anyway.
The two were in the back seat of Jimmy's car when a man with a shotgun suddenly pulled the car door open. He declared that it was a stick-up and then demanded money. Jimmy refused to give the man money and got out of the car, where the gunman shot him dead.
Mary was then ordered out of the car. And here it gets a little confusing. Some articles say that she was raped and then tried to run away. Other articles say she was not raped. In any case, when she tried to run, the man shot her.
At about 8:30 p.m. that evening, Charles Gordish and May Rasmussen were driving along Duck Island Road towards Trenton when they heard a girl screaming. Charles headed up a lane towards the sound.
The headlights caught Jimmy's body lying next to his car. Mary was in the back seat begging for help. Charles drove to the nearest payphone to call for help. By the time police arrived, it had begun to rain heavily, and they found Jimmy's body lying in a puddle of water. So that kind of destroys evidence.
Aha! Thank you for pointing that out. OG True Crime comes through every time. So Jimmy had been shot in the chest. Mary had also been shot. Some articles said in the buttocks. Others said in the abdomen. Those are close, but very different places.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe she was shot in one place and then the
bullet exited.
It was a shotgun, so
yeah,
it was buckshot, so it could have exited out the other side. Yeah, wherever she was shot. Yeah.
Got it. In any case, the buckshot caused widespread damage to her organs. The officers wrapped Mary in a blanket and rushed her to the hospital.
For 36 hours, Mary Mijatovic lingered at St. Francis Hospital. According to police, Mary stated that her attacker had been a medium-sized black man. However, some reports claim that a nurse told the police that Mary had said that, and the police never actually heard it from Mary herself.
This is where the story kind of
goes haywire.
I have many questions. Yep. Yes. So the police rounded up a group of 5 black men who camped in shanties in the marshlands of Duck Island. One was brought before Mary as a suspect, but she said he was too big, and she died on November 10th, 1938, 2 days after the assault.
The police found 2 shotgun shells at the crime scene, a handkerchief with the initial H embroidered on it, and a palm print on the car that didn't belong to either of the victims, but no real leads.
What do you think the H is for?
Don't know. Somebody's last name, perhaps, or first name. Could be a woman's handkerchief.
Yeah.
Could be nothing. I mean, it could be somebody else's handkerchief entirely.
Yeah, I mean, can't you just, I don't know, handkerchiefs, you could get them anywhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, prosecutor and future Trenton mayor Andrew Dutch was convinced that a relative of either Jimmy or Mary had a role in the killings. Maybe Mary made up the story of the black man with a shotgun in order to protect someone, perhaps her father.
White men from nearby communities combed the Duck Island woods for clues and suspects, which is terrifying.
Oh, yeah. Mob mentality can
terrifying.
get out of control really fast. So if there's a group of them, they're angry, this could escalate.
What could happen.
You never know. Yeah.
More than 75 people were questioned by year's end, but the prosecutor declared that the investigation had, quote, run up against a brick wall, unquote.
The public was fascinated by this case, not only because of the circumstances of the illicit affair, but 2 years earlier in 1936, a mystery novel, had been published by author Ellery Queen, in which a man leading a double life was murdered on Duck Island.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Oh my, it would be like if Game of Thrones and then all of a sudden there's a dragon problem. Like, Game of Thrones told us this was going to happen. Yes.
Almost a year later, on September 30th, 1939, Frank Casper, 28, and Catherine Kitty Werner, 36, were parked in a car at Duck Island when they were also attacked by someone with a shotgun. This couple was also having an illicit affair.
Frank and Kitty lived on the same street, 3 houses apart, with their respective spouses. The couples were friends and their kids played together. It's not known when the affair started, though.
A shotgun blast tore into Frank's face and neck, killing him instantly. Kitty ran from the car, but she made it only a few feet before a shot blew off her right arm. She was shot a second time, this one in the chest, and then her attacker bashed her head in with a cinder block.
Oh.
She also may have been raped.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
So the following Sunday morning of October 1st, 1939, a man named Pemberton Wemmer was scavenging the scrub brush for junk, deposit bottles, and coins. Is this Great Depression time?
30s, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, it makes sense that somebody might have been rummaging for things that they could collect money for later.
Right.
So, Pemberton Wemmer was scavenging deposit bottles and coins when he saw a foot poking out from a trash heap.
Pemberton did this every Sunday, rummaging for valuables out in the wilderness.
As one does.
As one does, yeah.
Yep.
And he had once found an artificial leg.
Wow.
Yeah. So thinking it was another one, he just gave it a tug. And from the mound of garbage came a woman's body. It was Kitty Werner. Pemberton hustled to the nearest phone about a mile away to call the police.
Payphones, remember?
I do.
Remember when we didn't have cell phones?
I do.
I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. Send a raven at the... Well, I mean, if you think about it, he
sent a raven for the police.
Well, that's what else would you do if there wasn't a payphone? If there seriously, I'm seriously want to know what would you do?
I thought about that. Like before there were even payphones, like you'd have to run to the nearest house or building or whatever.
Or police station. I don't even know. Yeah. So shout out to Pemberton for hustling to a payphone and getting the police there. They arrived at the scene about 20 minutes later and found Kitty. She had been shot twice. Her skull had been crushed and her face disfigured by that cinder block. And part of her arm was gone.
About 100 feet away was the Buick, with Frank dead in the back seat. The murder weapon had been a 12-gauge shotgun. It did not appear that anything had been stolen. Frank still had his wristwatch, and packages from a shopping trip were strewn about, so robbery was ruled out as a motive.
We off?
30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes.
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree.
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet.
You got it. You got it.
He peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Spotify.
Catherine's husband, Stanley, became a suspect for a minute, right? Because the husband is usually, he's got some explaining to do. But he was cleared, and police then went with the theory that the murders of Jimmy Tonzillo and Mary Majatovich were connected to Catherine and Frank's murders.
Frequenters of Duck Island for trysts were requested via the press to come forward for questioning and were promised the strictest of secrecy. Guess how many people came forward?
Yeah, I'm guessing.
None of them.
Yeah, goose egg.
Duck egg.
Yeah.
The police warned everyone against using Duck Island for trysts, but patrolled Duck Island to be on the safe side. And the police called these Spooner patrols.
Oh, they
Cute.
always need a fun name for whenever they do stuff. whenever they respond after crimes have already happened. So a $1,000 reward was posted. More people were rounded up and questioned, usually for no reason other than the fact that they were black. And still, there were no leads.
The police and press profiled the murderer as a, quote, sex-crazed maniac, unquote, who liked to spy on couples before attacking and murdering them. The investigation intensified before petering out again.
Over the next year, 2 couples parked on quiet roads in the vicinity reported being approached by a black man with a gun. There was only one injury, a shotgun wound to the arm, when on November 9th, 1940, Howard Wilson and Irene Robbins were shot at.
So November 9th, 1940. The first one was November 8th, 1938, I believe. Both around Election Day. Isn't that weird?
That is really weird. And if you think about how contentious American elections have been, it's always about race. It's always about class, right? I always wonder, when something happens around election time, was it motivated by somebody's idea of creating political unrest for votes to get people to motivate for the polls?
Interesting.
I do not know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it would make any effect on...
What? Are you kidding me?
No, I'm saying on Election Day, or if November 9th was like after Election Day. I mean, there wouldn't be any effect on the election.
There wouldn't be an effect on the election, maybe, but there definitely would be society. Like, this is Jim Crow. You don't see how it could have an effect on the election.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see how you don't see that.
Well,
Fruities, am I blind?
What I'm saying is, if it had happened like a week earlier, a week before the election, or sometime before the election, then it could have an effect on the election. But the election's already over, pretty much. And when they find the bodies, the election's over.
The election is over, but it's a continuum. That's what I'm saying. Even if it happened a little bit after the election, it might not affect who got into office.
Oh, okay.
But it would still affect politics. That's what I mean.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
I thought you were saying it would affect the election.
No, just the political climate.
The political climate, yes, of course. It would affect the political climate.
Okay.
Gotcha. All right, we came to an understanding.
Now we do live in the same America. Okay. All right.
The couple was parked in a car when a man came out of the bushes brandishing a shotgun and yelling about how he told them to stay out of there. Howard hadn't even had a chance to shut off the car engine before the man shot through the driver's side window, nearly taking off his arm.
Oh my gosh. He threw the engine into reverse and sped off. He was able to drive away to the nearest hospital. At first, he told police that he had been alone in order to protect the reputation of Irene. But then he admitted that she had been with him. The couple identified their attacker as an approximately 40-year-old black man.
Then on November 16th, 1940, there was another attack. This time, it was along a wooded area on Cypress Lane in Hamilton Township outside of Trenton, which was also often used by couples as a lover's lane.
The victims were Louis Kovacs, 35, and Carolina Morconi, who was 27. They were again neighbors having a secret affair. Although Louis was single, Carolina was married. Carolina had dropped her daughter off at her mother's house for a sleepover that evening and then headed out to meet Louis.
The two had been shot in the back seat of the car at such close range that powder marks burned them both. It appeared that the attacker just opened the door of the car and began shooting. Robbery was again ruled out as a motive, as Louis was still wearing an expensive ring and he still had his wallet.
On December 2nd, a white man named Joe Kalish was arrested based on a tip and some bloody trousers that were found after Jimmy and Mary had been murdered. Apparently, he'd been beaten by a man after he'd found him with his wife. However, this went nowhere.
Prosecutor Andrew Dutch, who had discarded his theory of a jealous spouse as the culprit, said, quote, "We are up against a lunatic, a man obsessed with a sex mania, probably a religious fanatic," unquote.
I don't know why prosecutors do this. It is, what's the opposite of helpful? I don't know.
Unhelpful.
Yeah, there you go. And at this point, they don't have anybody, right? So they're just riling up the public and making the public demand that somebody pays for this or gets in custody for it.
Right.
And given the racial tensions, of course, they're going to get any black person will do.
Right, right.
So the Duck Island case started getting national attention. In 1941, American Weekly magazine did a story on it, inaccurately telling of a killer who came out on full moon night, so making it seem like it's an animalistic kind of person. The article reported, quote, "With the full moon at his back, 3 times the strange petting party raider crept from the underbrush along a secluded lane and blasted the lives from an unsuspecting couple trysting there," unquote.
Petting party raider.
Wow.
I don't like it.
The language, I would, if there were an editor anywhere at this American Weekly magazine, wow. Probably sold a lot of copies, though.
Yeah, I bet it did. But in fact, none of the murders coincided with a full moon. American Weekly went on to insist that the killer would certainly strike again in 1941. But the shotgun killer was quiet all year, and on December 7th, America was suddenly at war with Japan.
Wow.
Trentonians temporarily forgot about the Duck Island killer.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, no, there is so much history being made on a daily basis. I was thinking about it today. I'm so tired of, in these unprecedented times, being said.
Right.
I don't want any more unprecedented times. I want all the precedents.
Peace.
All of them.
And quiet.
Peace and quiet. Yeah. So, I mean, it makes sense that the attention was diverted.
Right.
But then, on April 7th, 1942, a soldier from Fort Dix named John Testa, 25, and his girlfriend, Antoinette Mercantonio, 21, were attacked. They were sitting in John's car, parked on a road in Tullytown, Pennsylvania, when suddenly the door swung open and a man with a shotgun demanded their money.
However, before they had a chance to respond, the man shot into the car, hitting John in the arm. Antoinette was able to flee from the car, but the man chased after her and began beating her with the gun stock. John was able to start the car and chase after the man with it, and then the man fled from the scene.
Wow, that is the word harrowing when it's like,
yes.
Oh my God,
yeah.
Whoa,
harrowing,
whoa.
Yes.
So Testa lost his right arm, but both he and Antoinette survived and were able to give a description of their attacker, who they said was a tall, thin black man of about 50. And police found a piece of the wooden gun stock that had fallen off when Antoinette had been clubbed with the shotgun. On it was a partial serial number missing the first 3 of 6 digits.
After laborious records checking that took more than a year, Hamilton cops and state troopers found that a gun with those 3 serial numbers had been pawned in 1935 at Kruger's Pawn Shop on South Broad Street by a white man named Martin Keene, and he had never redeemed it.
Okay. This is some good investigative police work. I like to see this. Now, Keene worked for the WPA. Police began looking for a black man who worked with Keene at the WPA. They came up with a medium-sized black man from Hamilton named Clarence Hill. Now, why didn't they go to the pawn shop and say who he sold it to or who
we'll get
bought
there.
it?
We'll get there.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Police got Keene to say he gave the pawn ticket to Hill, but there was no record of Hill redeeming the goddamn gun.
Yeah. And the pawnbroker at Kruger's pawn shop claimed that he remembered Hill redeeming the shotgun with an expired pawn ticket, but his half of the pawn ticket was marked for auction, indicating that it had gone to auction.
Okay. He did not keep good records, which is required by New Jersey state law. And it has been implied that the police threatened to charge him if he did not say what they wanted him to say.
Right.
Do you catch my drift?
Yes.
Does anybody see what's going on here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they hunted down a black man that they could pin it on.
Yep.
And they made Martin Keene say that he gave his pawn ticket to Clarence Hill.
Mm-hmm.
So they found Clarence Hill. They presented him to Keene, said, this is the man that you gave the pawn ticket to, right? Right?
You better say what we want you to say.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do my New Jersey copper accent.
Then they got the pawnbroker to say that he remembered. Yeah, I remember giving that gun to that man. Yeah, sure.
And the prosecutor who was fucking shit up by saying inappropriate, gratuitous things before a suspect was ever found taints the jury. And, you know, the public wants this solved.
Right.
We're at war, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
Get this over with.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure for them to do it and not necessarily do it right.
Yeah. So at the time, Clarence Hill was 33 years old. Not 50.
No.
In the Army and stationed in South Carolina.
Mm.
On December 29th, 1943, Keene was taken to South Carolina, where he identified Hill as the black man he'd given his pawn ticket to. And he knew Hill from the WPA, so he knew who to pick.
Wow.
Hill was detained and questioned by military authorities.
This is terrifying. So now we're going to get into the investigation and the arrest. So Hill was then brought to Fort Dix in New Jersey on January 26th. According to Hill, he was kept from sleeping, beaten by military police, and threatened with a lynching until he made a confession. Hill was questioned for 34 days. 34 days before he was actually arraigned.
In the murders of Jimmy Tonzillo and Mary Majetovich, the police had a confession from him in which he allegedly told them that he bought and then drank whiskey and wine before going out to Duck Island and committing the murders.
Whiskey and wine. That doesn't sound like a great combination,
No.
but I have heard it in songs.
Okay.
She serves them whiskey and wine. They say, Brandy, you're a fine girl. That's the only time I've heard whiskey and wine as a combo.
Together, yeah.
Desired.
Right.
Anyway, however, Hill didn't even drink. And that day had been election day. Alcohol was not sold on election day. Also at the time, it was a stereotype that black people love drinking whiskey and wine. So
Yeah,
there's that.
obviously. So
Yeah,
obviously.
You know the blacks, they love whiskey and wine.
love whiskey and wine. So the police demanded other soldiers' names from Hill, men who, quote-unquote, knew about the pawn ticket. Then they brought in a man named Roy McNeil and treated him the same way that they had treated Hill in order to get him to say that he knew about the pawn ticket and the shotgun. But he refused.
Shout out to Roy.
Yeah.
So Hill wrote to his parents that the police were pulling some, quote, fast tricks, unquote, and trying to make him, quote, know something, unquote, about these murders. His parents hired Robert Queen and Frank Wimberly, the only black attorneys in Trenton, to represent him.
On February 3rd, 1944, Hill was turned over to civilian authorities. They demanded from Hill the location of the shotgun. According to Hill, he was threatened and beaten until he told them something.
Is anybody else wondering, like, he's an American citizen and he's a serviceman.
Yeah.
Shouldn't he have rights?
Yeah, you would think so.
No, he's
No.
black, though. So Hill told them he had buried it in his parents' basement. The police dug up the entire basement. And what do you know? It wasn't there. They went back to Hill, who then said that he had buried it in the woods near one of the crime scenes. But of course, it was not there either.
Instead of coming to the conclusion that they were pushing for something that Hill had no knowledge of, police called him a liar. While this was going on, Hill's defense attorneys were trying to find him. The military told them that the police had him. The police said the military had him, and the gun was never found.
Yeah, and by now, I mean, he's been in custody for months, right? And he has a family. He has a job. All those things are lost, and he's not given any right to an attorney or anything during this questioning.
This was before Miranda,
Wonderful. So finally, on March 6th, 1944, Clarence Hill was charged with 6 murders. He pleaded not guilty. So now let's get into the trial. What do you got for us, Beth?
Hill's trial began in December of 1944, and he was tried for the murder of Mary Mayatovich only. During the trial, Hill's attorney, Frank Wimberly, argued that Hill had been beaten to get a confession, and a Dr. Sam Moore testified that he had examined Hill on February 12th, and his body showed bruises and injuries from a beating.
You've maxed out your 401k, you're contributing to an IRA, and making some other investments. You're ahead of the game and doing well. But where do you go from here? The same old story can only get you so far. If you want a new take from a new type of financial professional, we invite you to get a fresh perspective beside an agent with the backing of New York Life. Insurance, investments, retirement, and more. Visit NYL.com to learn more. Investments are offered through registered representatives of NyLife Securities, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a New York Life company.
Hill testified on his own behalf, not something that defendants always do.
Yeah.
But he had a soft voice and a gentle, polite demeanor, and he most likely made a good impression. I mean, a Sunday school teacher who served in the military? I mean, that's a dream of a witness. And Hill testified that his confession was false and only came after police brutally beat him while in their custody.
He cried while recounting the beatings. Authorities, as they were called to the stand one by one, denied that they ever threatened or beat Hill.
Yeah, I mean, and, police testimony, for some reason, is the most credible inside of the courtroom.
Right.
Next to, like, a confession or a witness, the police's word is often the end-all, be-all in these scenarios. So John Testa, who had described his attacker as a tall, thin black man of about 50, was called to the stand by the defense. He would not identify Hill as his attacker, but he did say that he was about the right height.
Witnesses testified that on November 8, 1938, between 7 and 8 p.m., when the murder took place, Hill and his family were voting. The Reverend of Mount Olivet Baptist Church, where Hill was a superintendent, testified as to Hill's good character.
I also want to say, about our conversation earlier, is that this could also be a form of voter intimidation, right?
Yeah.
If you Black people want to act all uppity and vote like a citizen of this country, you got another thing coming, because we can make you a ward of the state in a minute, in a heartbeat, and take away every single right you think that you have.
Yeah.
So after a 2-week trial and 5 hours of deliberation, Hill was convicted by an all-white jury whose names and addresses were printed in the paper.
Yeah, so that's intimidating.
That is intimidating. Oh, man. And that's another way the system would force those juries to uphold what the system wants.
Yeah. If they did not convict him, they probably would have suffered consequences. Yeah.
Absolutely. But the jury recommended leniency in light of Hill's cooperation with the police.
But allegedly, one of the jurors told defense attorney Robert Queen that they actually recommended leniency because they had some doubt that he was guilty. But Hill was sentenced to life in prison.
So now let's get into where are they now?
Okay.
Well, we'll tell you. Hill's wife, Minnie Lee, and his 2 daughters never came to see him. He was never tried for the other 5 murders. Duck Island ceased to be a lover's lane after a large power station was built there.
In 1945, the Clarence Hill Defense Committee was formed by one of Hill's uncles and some friends and neighbors. They organized a letter-writing campaign, writing letters to the governor to demand a pardon. They distributed pamphlets about the case to the public and raised money for his defense.
While he was in prison, Hill was described as soft-spoken and gentle, a model inmate who never got into trouble and who was well-liked by everyone.
In August of 1948, 6 black men were convicted of the murder of an elderly shopkeeper in Trenton, New Jersey. Called the Trenton Six, the 6 young men were convicted by an all-white jury and sentenced to death.
Pick any town in the United States.
There's a Trenton Six.
There's a Trenton Six. And I think the goal is justice, right?
Right.
So anyway, the Trenton police, pressured to solve the case, had arrested the 6 men without warrants. They were held without being given access to attorneys and were questioned for as long as 4 days before being brought before any judge.
5 of the 6 men charged with the murder signed confessions written by the police. There was no forensic evidence, and the only living witness could not identify them. The CRC, or the Civil Rights Congress, led by black attorney William Patterson, eventually took up their cause. And Leon Josephson was also another CRC attorney, and he'll come up in a little bit.
Okay. The CRC were able to get the men a new trial before withdrawing and turning the case over to some nationally recognized attorneys. 4 of the Trenton Six were eventually acquitted. 2 were sentenced to prison. 1 was eventually paroled, and the other one died in prison of a heart attack.
Because of legal abuses in the treatment of suspects after the arrests, the case attracted considerable attention. The CRC and the NAACP generated publicity to highlight the racial inequities in the railroading of these suspects, their lack of access to counsel, the chief witness's inability to identify them, and other issues.
As the issue of false confessions was in the public eye, CRC attorney Leon Josephson took up Clarence Hill's case in 1953. The case gained the attention of some ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union attorneys, and they also decided to look into Hill's case.
Leon Josephson helped Hill with his parole petitions, and he went before the parole board every year between 1959 and 1963. The ACLU sought clemency on the grounds of false confession.
Hill was never granted clemency, but he was finally granted parole and released from prison on April 24th in 1964. At that time, he was 53 years old. The other murder indictments were dropped because 2 key witnesses had died and, quote, the confession of Hill couldn't be admitted in court as evidence under present standards forbidding coercion, unquote.
So they knew.
What?
They knew.
The fuck?
Now, Pennsylvania comes back into play. They sought extradition for the murders that had taken place in their state. So although Hill was released from prison, he was released in handcuffs and taken to a magistrate's court for a hearing. But Hill had throat cancer, so he was granted bail so he could get treated.
In August of 1964, New Jersey governor refused Pennsylvania's request for extradition.
Good.
Yes, that is good. I just Hill was treated for his throat cancer. I mean, just how much more can they do to him? You know what I mean?
Right.
His larynx was removed and he was given a voice box. He had difficulty finding a job, but finally did as a janitor at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, the same place that he had been treated.
For a time, he lived with his sister Lizzie, who had fought hard for his release. But once he got a job, he was able to get a small flat in Trenton. He lived quietly until he died of natural causes in 1973. So he got almost 10 years, and that's it.
Man. So his attorney, Leon Josephson, died of a heart attack in 1966. Josephson's son, Lee, wrote a book about this case. And that's the book you got!
That's the book I got and I read, and it was a difficult read because of all the racism.
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh.
It was pretty hard to read.
Really? And was the racism just coming from the recounting of the people at the time?
Yeah.
Wow.
Lots of uses of the N-word and the police joking around about inappropriate things. Yeah, you know.
Of course. Well, I guess that's it for the story. Let us know what you think. We're going to tell you what we think. Beth, what are your thoughts?
So I don't think he did it.
Nope.
So I don't think he snapped.
Nope.
He didn't have any of the factors in his childhood that we are used to seeing: abuse, neglect, etc.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like he had a pretty good childhood considering the circumstances, being born black.
Right.
Whenever he was born.
30s, yeah.
Actually, he was born in the 10s. Was he born
Oh,
in the
right.
10s?
He was 33.
Yeah.
33. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, in the 10s.
Yeah, something like that.
Kind of crazy that he, at 33 is when he was arrested, right?
Right.
His Jesus year is what we call that. His Jesus year that his life was ruined.
Yeah. Yeah, terrible.
Yeah.
I feel bad for him. I feel bad for his daughters who never got to know him.
Right.
It's just a really sad case.
It is.
Yeah, and all of the victims, too, who were killed with a shotgun, which is, terrifying.
Yeah.
It's poor Mary, 15
Yeah.
years old, pretty much just shot through the middle, and all those pellets just ripped through her body and tore up her organs.
Yeah,
Just
she was
really awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. With
Now,
all
who
that.
did it? I don't know. But this case reminds me of the Son of Sam, who targeted couples.
Oh, but they caught that guy.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
But he targeted couples sitting in cars.
Oh.
And the Son of Sam, before I knew the word incel, he seemed to me like a 1970s version of an incel.
Oh, incel before we had the word.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So I think probably the killer would be a single man with no experience with women who is jealous of these couples and angry that women rejected him and that he could not have a relationship with women.
Yeah, you look like a FBI profiler to me, and I believe everything you just said.
I mean, I'm not a profiler. I'm not a psychologist. I'm nobody, but...
No, you are. You're mine.
That's who I'd look for.
Well, you're one in my book, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
I told you I went down a rabbit hole, and one of the rabbit holes I went down was in wrongful convictions. And I found, and I'll get to it in my shout outs, but there's a whole community of victims who are victims connected to people who were wrongfully convicted. And it's a weird club to be a part of, right?
Yeah.
The people who were wrongfully convicted and the victims talking about how they felt quote unquote closure when that person was convicted. And then the convicted person does get exonerated, and it's a day of jubilation and joy for that exoneree, but re-traumatizing for the victim.
For the victims and the victims' families.
Right. And you don't think, until I started doing Fruitloops, I didn't think about the process for the victim and the re-victimizing by continuous trials or hearing about it in the media, etc. And I don't think he did it either.
Yeah.
I agree with your take on the profile. It is really unfortunate that the system just wasn't ready to do what it should have done at the time for the victims.
Do some actual police work.
Because it hurts everybody, right? A guy's in jail.
Whoever did it got away.
These victims are harmed, dead, etc. And the guy who did it is still free.
Out there somewhere.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
Yeah, very fucked up.
So that was just what I thought a lot about Clarence, and I felt really bad for Clarence. I also feel really bad for the victims and the community.
Yeah.
This must have been a terrifying time and place to exist in. And so
yeah, I bet it was.
Certainly I don't want to discount that, but I I really felt for Clarence in this one.
Yeah, me too.
Let us know what you think. Now it's time to talk about how not to get murdered.
All right.
Here we go. If you love true crime and you don't want to die, here's a tip for you.
This segment is not intended to be victim blaming. We thought of this segment because I read somewhere that a lot of people listen to true crime because they want to know what they can do to be safer. This is not meant to blame the victims. It's just learning from other people's experiences.
Okay, so I was listening to Dateline True Crime Weekly, which is one of my favorites. And they talked about some safety tips from a former Secret Service agent. And these aren't necessarily new to us here at Fruitloops, right? Fruities, we know a little bit about these, but they're good reminders for all of us. And when you boil it down, it really is just these two things. We want to focus on situational awareness and fuck being polite.
Yeah.
So this particular tip from the Secret Service agent was about ride sharing. So when a car pulls up, don't just get in just because the picture and the color looks like it and you want to go to your destination. Open the door, or if the window's rolled down, what's your name and who are you here to pick up? Don't get in unless you get satisfactory answers.
Right.
Take a photo of the license plate. And one of the things that the Secret Service agent talks about is we might, women in particular, be afraid to let the driver know that we are being extra safe. I'm clocking you. I'm sharing your information. I'm getting your picture. I'm sending it to everybody. That might feel weird. Like you don't want them to know that you're doing it. But who gives a fuck? This is your life. So take the photo, text it to whoever you need to. And the other thing is location sharing. That's one we're familiar with. But do not be afraid to let the driver know that you're sharing this to keep yourself safe. The other thing is, the last thing, make it really hard for the driver to figure out where you live, especially if you're, having a Lyft pick you up from the airport. You're going to be gone for like weeks, right? Or you'll live alone. Change your address a little bit and have them pick you up in front of the house next door.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah. Or have them drop you off at the house next door and, get your stuff out, take your time, be real slow, and just wait for them to leave before you actually walk up. If you live in an apartment, it's a little bit easier, or a apartment complex. But if you're at a house in a neighborhood, maybe consider having them drop you off next door.
Right.
Or a couple houses down. So that's my tip from NBC News.
All right. Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, NBC News and Dateline. So now let's get into the shout out portion of our show, where we shout out any content by or about any people of color, by or about any LGBTQ folks or anyone else marginalized, or any true crime goodies.
Okay.
So I was just blabbing about healing justice and this woman who was brutally raped. And she identified her attacker and she went through the trial, and turns out the wrong person went to jail for decades for this crime. And so she was dealing with the guilt from that.
Right.
And so she decided, I should meet this person, right? We were both affected by this crime and we should both try to heal. And so that's what she's been doing. She started this nonprofit organization. Her name is Jennifer Thompson. She has a TED Talk. I will put the link in the show notes. Anybody who's a fan of true crime, I think, should listen to what she has to say about healing justice and restorative justice. And again, she started just building a friendship with this innocent man, and then decided to build a model so that other victims and wrongfully convicted people could come together and heal. So just wanted to share that. What do you got?
Very cool. So I wanted to shout out Sasha, Reid, and the Midnight Order. Have you watched it yet?
No.
Okay.
I need to hear more.
I watched it on Hulu. I think it's other places. It's put together by Freeform.
Oh, okay.
And it's a documentary series that follows Dr. Sasha Reid. And Dr. Sasha Reid, she put together some data.
Okay.
I do
like data.
Some kind of data. Let me look this up.
Okay, hang on. Is it a scripted show or it's a documentary, you say?
It's it's not a scripted show, no.
Is she a superhero?
No.
Okay.
She put together a database and was able to find a serial killer.
Really?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. I think it happened in Toronto.
Okay.
And she was able to pick out a bunch of women who had been killed or disappeared, and she was telling police there's a serial killer here. Mm-hmm. And they were like, yeah, whatever. Uh-huh. And it turned out there was a serial killer.
Oh,
so
dang.
Yeah.
Sasha Fierce, anyone? Hello.
So she put together this group of young women they call the Midnight Order, and they're all qualified. They all have different skills, and they get together and work outside the system to, I'm going to quote the show, protect the vulnerable, solve cold cases, and dive into the dark minds of killers using forensic expertise and world-class data skills.
Okay,
so it's fun.
Love this.
Yeah.
I love this. It's a real life set of lady superheroes.
Yeah, it's a fun show. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Okay, thank you.
And then we've shouted this show out a lot before, Signs of a Psychopath.
Yeah.
I watch it on Max, And season 8 is on there now.
Season 8?
Season 8. Yeah, it seemed like there was season 5, and then all of a sudden there's like all the way up to 8. So there's a bunch of new seasons, and
awesome.
I think the first episode on season 8 is about Taylor Schabusiness.
Who?
Taylor Schabusiness. We also talked about her before.
Oh.
She killed a boyfriend and then decapitated him and left his head in a bucket for his mom to find.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, my. Okay, well, I'm not going to bed. I'm watching this tonight.
Yeah, it is fascinating. That particular episode is really fascinating.
Oh, I
love
it.
And freaky and scary.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I am excited. What else you got? Oh, wait.
That's it.
Everything.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So to recap, want to shout out an organization called Healing Justice. You can find them at Healing Justice on Instagram. And there's also a TED Talk by the founder, Jennifer Thompson, about healing justice anywhere on YouTube. And the link will be in the show notes. Also, we've got a program called Sasha, Reid and the Midnight Order. It's a documentary on Hulu and other places, as well as the show called Signs of a Psychopath, Season 8 on Max. And special note to episode 1 about Taylor Schabusiness. Oh, and that's the end.
Yeah,
okay.
We don't need to do anything else.
We don't need to do anything. Wow. Okay, so Beth, where can the people find us?
Our website is fruitloopspod.com, and we use Fruit Loops Pod for all of our social media. The footnotes for each episode can be found on our website. Plus, check it out for the different ways that you can support the show. Also, join us on Patreon, where we have literally hundreds of hours of bonus content. You can also support us by supporting our sponsors or by giving us a 5-star review.
5 stars only, please.
Also, don't forget to subscribe.
That's right. Now, listen close. This is a weekly podcast, and new episodes drop every Thursday. So until next time, look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there. Yeah, let's do it. Definitely. And that's all I have.
And that's the news. All right.
That's the news.
Talk to you later.
Look
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Well, Clarence Hill.
Let's do it. Oh, I'm actually going to title this episode The Duck Island Murders.
Oh, good call. Yeah. I fully support it.
Okay.
Because let me tell you something about Clarence Hill. It's a more common name than you would realize.
Huh.
Yeah. Plus Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill. So when you search these two words together, that's what I got a lot of.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to kill time while I find the beginning of the script.
Okay,
I found it. And sorry, my setup got moved. I have it's ergonomically set to me.
Right.
I have my bouncy ball. I have a place to bounce my leg. I have, I move around and everything is in a certain spot so I can get to it without disrupting things. But anyway, enough about me. Easy like Sunday morning. Oh, no, step down. What? It was like that. A little bit of time passed, and now we know a black woman is positioned to kick Donald J. Trump's ass.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yep. All right.
It's a good advice. It's Justin. Oh, Sarah. I practiced that one a lot today.
You did a good job. I liked it.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna do it. Alexander Hamilton. I was actually really excited when I found this tidbit of information. I was like, oh my God, Beth, I need to put this in the sources. Sorry there. Sorry, you already found the information. Yeah.
I gotcha.
That happens a lot. Anyway,
the black population in Trenton climbed.
Whoa!
I don't know what happened.
Say that 5 times fast. Trenton climbed like
All of a sudden, I forgot how to pronounce Trenton.
Interesting. Well, it was a sticking point earlier. Have you reconciled it in your mind?
I haven't, apparently.
That's all. Where was I? I don't know.
During the 1920s.
Payphones, remember?
I do.
Remember when we didn't have cell phones? Send a raven.
Send a raven. Sorry, I burped it while I was talking.
That's okay. It happens. It's natural. I need to stop reading.
I do that to you all the time.
Wow, I got so into
I know, right?
Woo. Sorry, Beth.
Petting party raider.
Wow.
I don't like it.
The language.
Yeah.
I would.
And they got
wise guy. Why I oughta. She serves him whiskey and wine. It'll say, Brandy, you're a fine girl. That's the only time I've heard whiskey and wine as a combo.
Together.
Anyway.
All right. We'll talk on
will
Thursday.
Get this audio in the drive. You get some sleep, my friend.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
24 hours ago, I found out the person that I'd been dating and seeing for the last 6 months as a con man.
That is my sister Emma. Andrew Tonks's lies had been so convincing, she'd invested $300,000 with him. However, the tables were about to turn on Andrew. What he didn't know was that Emma had discovered his real identity. But to get any chance of justice, Emma had to act like it was business as usual. Coming up in this series,
and that's when murder, all this stuff goes through my mind. I'm really, really scared.
I'm assuming Sarah has watched too much Netflix and figures I've been defrauding you. Couldn't be further from the truth.
That's what this was, a real-life story that seems so unbelievable, but it was actually true.
A true story that all starts with one simple swipe to the right. I'm Sarah Ferris.
And I'm Emma Ferris, and this is my story, Conning the Con.
Hey, podcast listeners, I'm Paul Brandis introducing my podcast, Countdown to Dallas. It's a fascinating, in-depth look at the seemingly unconnected events that led to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. It's based on my book of the same title. In that book and in this podcast, I go all the way back to 1939, when Lee Harvey Oswald was born into a troubled and dysfunctional family. I'll follow his transient and often violent teenage years and young adulthood, painting a fuller picture of the man who would later become Kennedy's killer. I also take a look at events unfolding in that era, like Cuba and Vietnam, and I'll unpack the conspiracy theories too, not one of which has ever been conclusively proven. Subscribe to Countdown to Dallas at evergreenpodcasts.com or your favorite listening app, October 31st.